Hi, welcome to Green Cove Springs today. I'm Chris Eversole, the Communications Coordinator, and with me today are Mitch Timberlake, who's the Vice Mayor, and Mike Null, who's the Assistant City Manager. And our topic today is a decade of change or a decade of promise. And what we're talking about is the needs of the city that need to be met in the future. So Mitch, tell us a bit about what you think we need to be thinking about in terms of the future of Green Cove Springs.
Thank you, Chris. Green Cove is really at a very pivotal point. There's a tremendous amount of growth that is headed our way. Secondly, we've got a lot of aging infrastructure. We've had a history of fixing things when they broke, and that worked just fine. Unfortunately, we're now 30 years into products that had a 20-year life expectancy, and we're facing a lot of changing regulations.
And a lot of that infrastructure, you can't see, it's underground. Obviously the streets and so forth above ground, you can see those, and everyone knows that there's work to do there. There's also storm pipes, as Vice Mayor said, that are 30 to 40 years into a 20-year life cycle, so they're in need of replacement.
Well, what are some of the things the city's done to work in this direction, for instance, with their current utility systems and their current utility funding mechanisms?
Correct, Chris. And in the last year to 2 years, we've done a tremendous amount of work as a council to make sure that the various utilities fund themselves appropriately. What you may not be aware of is that in addition to being the city council is also the board of directors for the electric utility, the wastewater utility, the water and sewer, etc. So there's a dual set of responsibilities there. Mike, one of the things that we're dealing with from a growth perspective is if you look at Highway 17, it's pretty well built out.
Right.
If you flip to the other side of the river and you look at St. John's, not so much St. John's County, but St. John's, the community, they're growing at over 200% a year. If you look at Fleming Island, it's pretty well blown out. And now we're looking at the Beltway moving in south of town. And I would expect, Mike, that we'll see similar growth to what we've seen at Oakleaf, at the Beltway and Blanding.
Absolutely, that's the kind of growth that we hope to see here, and that's the kind of growth we need to get ready for.
The real
Sure.
question that we're trying to address is how do you manage this kind of growth?
Right.
I mean, the reality is it's coming, so now we're left with an alternative of do we sit back and react when it comes, or do we plan ahead and try to be ready to do the growth? And personally, I think we'd much rather be in a position of being proactive about planning for growth instead of reactive.
Right, absolutely.
So the city maintains a capital improvement plan. That capital improvement plan looks out over a 5-year planning horizon and seeks to identify the most important projects for the city. Those projects would encompass everything from water, sewer, the new wastewater treatment plant that we're talking about, parks and recreation, along with streetscapes and a number of other types of things. So from a funding perspective, some of those items are going to be funded on a year-to-year basis in the capital improvement plan. What we're talking about with a decade of progress is essentially putting together a different funding plan that will take advantage of some of the surtax revenue, and the county did just renew the surtax. So we'll take advantage of some of that surtax revenue to front-end load those capital improvement projects, get the most critical on the board, underway and completed before the growth hits us. We would look at being able to do that over a planning horizon of roughly 10 years. Thus, that's why we've called this plan a decade of progress. And I have to be very careful when we talk about this because it is still something that the council is discussing. It's not a plan that we're ready to put out in its final format yet because we have to decide exactly which projects would go into it, what the funding sources would be, what it would look like from a return on investment perspective, and be prepared to go to the citizens of Green Cove and let them understand exactly what's going to be done, why it's important for them, and what they will be able to achieve from the plan.
So Mitch, can you summarize what we're really saying here in this decade of progress?
Certainly. We talked a little bit about up front about the growth and a number of drivers for this decade of progress. Some of the aging infrastructure, growth, changing regulations, and those types of things that the city is going to have to deal with. In reality, the simple way of looking at this is that we're now at one of those places in our history where we need to put together a plan that says that we're ready for the next 15 to 25 years of growth. And that's exactly what this decade of progress plan will do. It'll allow us to go ahead and get the critical infrastructure pieces in place so that we're prepared for growth. We've got it financed today at the lower interest rates than what you might expect to have in the future. And from the city's perspective, we're very well positioned to take advantage of the growth instead of the growth taking advantage of us.
Well, one of the reasons we do these shows is to talk to the citizens about how the city is planning proactively. So how do you feel about the city's efforts to work together, the cohesiveness of council, the staff being proactive, working with consultants? How's it feel to be part of an organization that's making this much progress?
We've got a very good council. We've got a council that is very willing to debate ideas. Many of us have come from different points of view, so we have the ability to look at those things and bring them out on the table and discuss them. There's a tremendous amount of cohesiveness that allows us to get down to a point of getting to an agreed upon solution, and we've been very effective in doing that over the last 3 or 4 years. So I'm very excited about working with the council on these types of things. In addition to council, we've got a staff that is tremendously responsive. They're dedicated to making sure that Green Cove is a great place to live and to raise a family. And I enjoy working with not only council, but with city staff, and then obviously with the citizenry of Green Cove.
Oh, great. Go ahead, Mike. Sure.
And from the standpoint of staff, as Vice Mayor said, we do have a wonderful council, and they're very supportive of staff, and they have given us the tools and everything that we need to do a great job for the citizens.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us on Green Cove Springs today.